help you. And what I've seen city workers do in providing that kind of warmth, you know, on Saturday morning when I went to the warming center after we saw that fire in the Bronx, and I was there alongside Speaker Hastie and State Senator Jamal Bailey and Councilmember Kevin Riley, was that New Yorkers were at a loss of what could happen next. This was before the worst of the storm was to hit. What could they do? And it was through the kindness, the service of city workers and also the American Red Cross that they were finding a moment to get a sense of themselves. So I'll pass it over for your first question. You're very welcome.
Good morning. Yes, if an individual is in danger, right, danger to themselves or to others, we will involuntarily remove individuals to the hospital. That is our solution of last resort. Wherever possible, we really try to build relationships and trust with the individuals that we serve. Over this weekend, there were 3 involuntary removals to the hospital, but as the mayor has noted, many, many more voluntary removals, and that is based on the long history and relationship building that outreach workers do, and to convince people that this is, in fact, a truly exceptional circumstance and they need to accept a placement.
Yeah, Katie. Hi, Mayor. So did you give the guy a jacket?
No, we actually put him in his car and gave him hand warmers, got the heat back up.
I wanted to ask, one of the things I noticed, and I've heard complaints from people, is that bus stops haven't been cleared, and even crosswalks, like even this morning coming to City Hall, Park Place, and Broadway, like it was about 2 feet high when they cleared the sidewalk. So whose responsibility is it particularly for bus stops? I saw yesterday tons of, elderly getting on buses, and it was difficult for people to climb over the snow pile. So I don't know if that's the property owners who have the bus stops in front, or whose responsibility is that, and if the city will step in to get some of these cleared.
Yeah. I'll have our deputy mayor speak.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it is the Department of Transportation's responsibility to clear bus stops, and we have activated extra resources from our contractor and our DOT staff to be working on that. This was sort of an extraordinary amount of snow, and as you know, all of our workers are working to do everything around the city to clear snow in front of their properties, but we are working to clear all those bus stops.
Do you have data on how many were cleared? I saw, anecdotally a photo of Brooklyn, but I can tell you, like Queens Boulevard yesterday, major artery, none of the bus stops were cleared, and the buses were still running. So do you have data on how many bus stops were cleared yesterday and today?
Not immediately, but people should report those when they see them so that we can respond.
Back to the question about the people, the homeless people who are on the streets. And I know that getting 170 people into shelter is momentous and hard to do, but there are sometimes 3,000 or 4,000 people on the street at any given time. I'm wondering, when you do this outreach, where are you going? Are you going to the encampments? Are you going to the subways? Are you going to the other places where people seek warmth to try to convince them to come out of the cold? And is there, how do you feel about the fact that some people have to be brought in involuntarily, especially since the man apparently froze to death at Junction Park in Queens?
Look, I think the work of these incredible city outreach workers is both of their own planning, where they know where they have to go to actually find and meet and make the case to homeless New Yorkers, but also it's in response to New Yorkers' calls to 311. And that's why it's so helpful, is that I know there are so many New Yorkers who see someone out in this kind of cold and know what we all know, which is that no one should be out in this kind of cold. And when they make that phone call, that also informs where the outreach workers are going. So it has to be proactive. It cannot be a wait for homeless New Yorkers to come to us. We have to go out there and make the case directly. And I think that the 170 placements, as you said, it's not only a testament to the outreach work that's being done, it's also a glimpse into the far larger number of conversations that are being had. And then when it comes to involuntary commitment, I think, as was said, this is a last resort. However, it is a resort when it is of a medical danger to a New Yorker to stay out there.
I just wonder how frustrated you are as a mayor who cares about people, that when we know that there are 3,000 or 4,000 people on the street, and you can only get 170 to come in and get shelter, and you know it's going to be colder and colder as the week goes on.
I think first I would say the census of homeless New Yorkers, especially in a moment of this kind of cold, it's hard to pinpoint exactly what it has been over these last few days. However, there is a hope count coming up this week where we will get a more accurate number of how many New Yorkers are homeless here across our city. For me, this is a moment where the city can show itself as a government that can meet the needs of New Yorkers, and also one that has to listen to New Yorkers. Because Marcia, you had flagged in the past that you'd spoken to a homeless New Yorker who didn't want to go to a shelter because they didn't think that they would be offered a single bed on their own. And so part of our outreach has also been, how do we ensure we're offering a wide variety of options for a New Yorker to come in? Because the most important thing is to get that New Yorker off the street, get them into the warmth. I can tell you that the cold, we pride ourselves on being tough in this city, but after 8 years of not facing this kind of cold, we might be numb to what it actually means for people. And the other thing I would just say is the dangers are not just in the conditions, but also how we respond to the conditions. So for those who are shoveling and who have been shoveling, we remind you to give yourself multiple passes at that snow, not to try to get it all done in one go. The FDNY has also shared with us, in the past, there have been medical emergencies as a result of not taking the correct approach with snow shoveling. And don't find your form from the way that I do it.
Today, because that man that I spoke to,
Yeah.
your staff actually got him a single bed, and he went in and got shelter, so he wasn't on the street because of your action.
Thank you, Marcia. That was also because of you having flagged that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, you seem to have been all over the place yesterday. Can you talk about that and where you went, and what did you want to see or look for or look at? And number two, do you plan on having all schools open tomorrow?
That is our hope, and that's what we're planning for right now. We will share as soon as we get to the definitive. I will tell you that, yesterday began early, but frankly, that's the time it began for many New Yorkers who are working hard, right? I was out of the house, I think, before 5 a.m. We headed out to the shift change, and then from there at the shift change, we went to Central Park, where we saw a number of other workers who were hard at work shoveling. From there, we went to a press conference, and then from there, we drove through a number of neighborhoods just on our way back to just keep an eye out. And so there was one instance where somebody was trying to get their car out. We all got to a shovel, helped them out. There was another where somebody, this was at a NYCHA development, was trying to get their car in. And we met them at the beginning of the parking lot. They had an entire bed of snow. It was, an uncle and his 3 nephews with 1 shovel. And so we got to work and helped them in. We drove into Queens. We met a man whose tires were far too low and he was not able to drive through the street. So we shoveled, we got him out. And then we were about to call sanitation, and then there they were. There were 2 plow trucks that were just right there coming in at the perfect time. We went through Astoria, and this is all on the way back to Gracie, and that's where we saw this 85-year-old woman who was trying to shovel. There was a 20-something-year-old young woman who was helping her. Then we started to help her. There were a whole number of situations that we saw. But I think at the heart of it was just, yesterday was a glimpse into what city workers do every single day. And truly, the depth of my appreciation, I don't know if I can fully communicate it, because they are doing the impossible, they are doing the incredible, and for them, it's the ordinary. And that's just a testament to the incredible people we have here and the leadership that also leads them every single day.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Mayor.
Hi, Liz. How's it going?
Good. I spoke to Queensborough President Donovan Richards last night, and I asked him for his assessment. He said as of last night, he would give you an A. But one thing he was seeing, and he acknowledges this is not the city's responsibility, but he got complaints of people being stuck on the highways. And I was wondering if that was something that the city noticed too. And his question was, could there have been better coordination between the city and state on clearing those highways and getting people moving? Because he said his own mother got stuck on the highway.
Yeah. I'll just pass it over.
As Commissioner Iscol mentioned, in our Emergency Operations Center, we had dozens of agencies represented, including state agencies, and actually the tow truck task force was coordinating tow trucks across the city, including on highways that are maybe state-owned. And so we were responding in real time to everything that was happening, city, state, even some federal level coordination.
This is from Molly. Can she elaborate on the 3 folks who were forcibly removed, like the circumstances of it? And second, have the Adams era shelter rules relating to migrants been relaxed? And if they have, when must migrants leave the shelters?
Yeah, Thank you. I'm not going to get into the details of the 3 specific cases. I want to protect people's medical privacy. An individual who is not appropriately dressed, who is wet, who is unable to acknowledge that there are the real dangers. That is the kind of instance, particularly in this weather, where we'll take somebody to the hospital. And I do want to stress these are decisions that are made by clinicians, and the next step is to take somebody to a hospital where a doctor can assess them fully and determine what the next step is there. Right. So this isn't it's not incarceration, and it's not involuntarily removing people to shelter. It really is about a medical decision making. We'll take the people to the emergency department, and the doctors there will make the appropriate decision. With respect to the asylum seekers, there is only one designated asylum seeker site left in the city. That's the Bruckner site that's operated by the Housing Recovery Office. There are no discharges happening at this time. The long-term plan for the Bruckner site is still under development, but there are no time limits on those shelter stays.
Every migrant who needs shelter can get shelter.
Anybody in the city of New York who needs shelter can get shelter.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you. Hello, good morning, Mr. Mayor. I just want to get some clarity. I know you're not pinpointing the cause of death, but at this time, is New York City attributing the 7 deaths to the storm? That's one question, if we could get just some real clarity on that. And then the second question, I wonder if you're ready to give, I think this was part of the question that was previously being asked, if you give yourself and the city's response a grade for how you've done so far, and what was kind of you've talked about this, but what was your strategy going in? I know you looked at the kind of the failures of the past, but there was a lot more that went on in terms of the response and your particular role and presence during this time around. So what grade you give yourself and the rest of the response and the people behind you?
I will leave it to New Yorkers to give me a grade. I will, however, say that I am incredibly impressed and appreciative of the work of the city workers, both their leadership here and all of them who are out there across New York City. I think that for so many New Yorkers, for all of the conversation about politics, really what they want to know is, can you meet their basic needs? And I think what city workers showed yesterday is that we can. And it's only possible if you take time in advance to prepare for something like this. And so when I look at these commissioners, when I look at the heads of these agencies and departments, what I also see are not what they did, frankly, on Sunday or even on Saturday, but frankly, what they were doing on Thursday and Wednesday, the calls that they were having, the plan that they were having, procuring additional salt for the city just in case. We had to be ready for every eventuality. We were talking about a wide spectrum of possibility of snowfall, and I wanted to make sure that if anything, we were over-prepared and we were over-communicating to New Yorkers, because what we did not want to have happen was that a New Yorker would go about their day on Sunday without knowing that this would be the coldest weather they'd seen in 8 years, without knowing that this would be the largest snowfall we'd seen in years. We wanted every New Yorker to know that. And I'm also appreciative of those that are working behind the scenes. I've had a few, opportunities to meet them, but even the incredible men and women who run Notify NYC. Right, more than 1 million New Yorkers are signed up to a texting system, which you can also join by texting Notify NYC to 692-692. And when you do so, you get updates that can even be localized to your zip code. And that helps New Yorkers stay abreast. And I'd also just frankly say thank you to the press corps, because oftentimes the questions that you're asking are amplifying the concerns of everyday New Yorkers. And so that helps it bring it to the attention of city government. We want our government to be a responsive one. We want it to be an excellent one and an efficient one. And I'll just pass on the question about your first question. I think that the difficulty we have, frankly, is that it is still too early to attribute the cause of death, and therefore it's too early to tie it to the storm specifically. But as soon as we have those autopsy results, which we anticipate at some time soon, we will be able to answer both that question and the earlier questions.
You said that all of the individuals, or most of them, had an interaction?
Some of them. Some of them,
So.
yes.
Okay.
Had an interaction with the shelter system.
Yes, go ahead. Mr. Mayor, thank you. Any sense of the cost that this storm cost the city in terms of sanitation, extra overtime?
I'll just note that it's not over, so we're still doing our response, and we'll be doing that throughout the week, but also we will do whatever needs to be done to make sure New Yorkers are taken care of. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, well, Paul and then Hannah.
For the Deputy Mayor for Operations, I was wondering if you could walk us through a little bit about what that 311 review looked like of prior storms, and what sort of neighborhoods you identified, and how to characterize the response to this storm.
Okay, so we have a monitoring capability to be looking at 311 complaints as they are happening during the storm in real time, and we also did a review of 311 complaints over the last few storms. We specifically wanted to focus on complaints around properties that we own to make sure that we're doing our part. And then we let all of our agencies know the specific locations that were issues in the last few storms so that they could target those locations and make sure that they were clearing sidewalks in front of city-owned property. We want to make sure we're doing our part as we're asking New Yorkers to do their part as well.
I'm wondering, you've mentioned that you're planning to reopen schools tomorrow. We're talking about clearing the sidewalks. Is there a concern about refreezing overnight? Have you spoken with the Chancellor about the possibility of another day of virtual learning? And, when can families expect to get an update if there is one as far as virtual learning?
So I think this is part of what the Chancellor had shared earlier, which is that right now there are hundreds of DOE employees who are also supplementing the work of DSNY as well as many other city agencies and departments in clearing the snow right outside of schools to make sure that it is safe for students to actually return. I think that's just, to be clear, that's what drives all of our decisions is safety. That's why we made the decision for today to be remote, because the conditions were so hazardous that we didn't want there to be so many more New Yorkers who were out having to come to school. We're going to be sharing that decision with New Yorkers soon, around tomorrow and the days to come. However, what I will say is that is our hope, is to ensure that we return to in-person learning.
We have time for a few more. Yeah, Moses and then Tim.
All right, I wanted to ask about power outages and if you've talked to the state about reaching out to Con Ed, and do you have any tips or advice for the New Yorkers with current outages out in parts of Brooklyn?
Can you say the last part one more time? Do you have any tips and advice for
Tips or advice for the New Yorkers that are currently in the cold because of the outages?
I think the first thing I would say is to call 311 immediately. The city wants to know if you are facing any kind of an outage of this kind. It is also our job to help you respond to this. And yesterday when we had an emergency briefing, we also had representatives from Con Ed there as well. And because it is critical for us to not just work as a whole of city government approach, but frankly, an approach that encompasses everything that affects New Yorkers' lives. They're affected by state government decisions, city government decisions, by private companies' decisions, and so we want to actually have that cohered. So the number one thing would be call 311 if you're facing an outage. The city wants to know, the city wants to help. And the other thing I would just say, I've spoken a lot about safety in the context of staying inside, staying warm, avoiding unnecessary travel. I would also say in a moment of immense cold that to be mindful with space heaters, that you do not leave them running unattended, and that you also do not have them operating within 3 feet of something that is flammable.
Thank you. All right, last one, Timmy, go ahead.
So yesterday you told students they could throw a snowball at you if they were upset. Has anyone done that yet?
Not yet. A number of the kids this morning were very excited about it. So I feel like it could occur at some point today. Just on my toes.
All right, sorry, just one more right here.
Yeah.
I just had one off topic.
Oh, hey, Sally, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Doing well.
Last week, we reported that your law department is suing to stop the production of this TV show Behind the Badge, as well as Kaz Daughtry is going to Homeland Security. So I just had two questions. One, are you in touch with Mr. Daughtry at all in his new position or soon to be new position? And two, have you seen the footage of this show, and do you have any reaction to how much access these camera crews got to crime scenes?
So I am not personally in touch with Mr. Daughtry, and I have not seen the footage myself of this show. I can tell you, however, that we're continuing a pre-existing law department policy on their action that they're taking. Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you all so much.
Snow is too soft for a snowball. Try it. It's very light.
Just keep them remote.
Those ice balls.